Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress. The wait is almost over. 2 days, then the World Championship match will start. Game 1 will be played on Friday, November 9th in London. On Chess to Impress we finalized the countdown by looking at the first 46 matches for the World Championship. Carlsen-Caruana is number 47. We've arrived in 2014, where we saw the Carlsen-Anand rematch. How did this come about? The candidates tournament was again held as an 8-player double round-robin event in Khanty-Mansiysk in Russia in March 2014 with a prize fund of €420,000. These were the players in the candidates tournament. Viswanathan was there, being the runner-up of the last World Championship match. 2 players qualified on rating, Levon Aronian and Sergei Karyakin. 2 players qualified through the Grand Prix tournament cycle, Veselin Topalov and Shahryar Mamedyarov. 2 players through the World Cup. The finalists of the World Cup were Vladimir Kramnik and Dmitry Andreikin. Peter Svitler was the wild card for the candidates tournament. This is the final table, and Viswanathan Anand won the event. As you can see, a full point ahead of number 2 Sergei Karyakin. It was a big surprise that Anand, well in his 40s, won the candidates tournament. What also strikes is bottom place for Veselin Topalov. Only a few years ago he was at the top of the game. It was the first time since the Kasparov-Karpov matches held between 1984 and 1990 that the same opponents met in consecutive World Championship matches. Anand was the second former champion to win the candidates tournament. Karpov did that in 1987 and 1990, and he was also the second oldest player to win the candidates tournament. Viktor Korchnoi did that in 1977 and 1981. Norway wanted to organize the match, but did not come up with a proposal, and then the match was awarded to Sochi in Russia, held in the Olympic Media Center. Earlier that year, the Olympic Winter Games were held in Sochi. Carlsen initially was not happy with the choice of venue, but later signed the match contract, as did Anand. Here we see both players during the match. World champion Carlsen on the left and his challenger Anand on the right. There was a draw in game 1, but then Carlsen won game 2 with the white pieces. Anand hit back straight away in game 3. 2 draws followed, and we had a very dramatic game 6 that we're going to look at in this video. Let's get into it. The game was played on the 15th of November 2014. White was Carlsen, black was Anand, and Carlsen opened with e4. Anand played a Sicilian, knight f3, e6, d4, c takes, knight takes, and now knight f6 has been played millions of times, attacking the e4 pawn, and then white plays knight c3. But for this game Anand had prepared a6, which is called the Kan variation of the Sicilian. A big surprise to see Anand play this. It's very rare to see this opening in an elite event. In this video I make use of the comments of Anish Giri, who analyzes this game in New in Chess magazine. Carlsen plays c4, the so-called Maroczy bind setup, grabbing space and preventing black from playing the freeing move d7, d5. That square is in white hands. Knight f6, knight c3 and bishop b4. Now black threatens to take on e4 because the knight is pinned. So queen d3 from Carlsen and knight c6 with a threat of knight e5, which is annoying for white. So Carlsen took on c6, d takes, he took on d8, swapping the queens, and e5. Knight e4 here was played before, but Anand plays knight d7, and that was a new move in this position. Giri thinks it's likely that Anand had mixed up something, as it would be a poor decision to go into such an unpleasant endgame, especially against Carlsen, who is known to enjoy these positions like no other. So maybe something went wrong already in Anand's preparation. Bishop f4, protecting the pawn on e5. Anand took, doubling white's pawns, and king c7. h4, a standard idea, explains Giri. White is heading for the weak kingside pawns. White is enjoying a very pleasant edge, he says. b6, finding a spot for the bishop to go to b7. h5, h6, Carlsen castled queenside. There goes the bishop to b7, rook d3, c5, and rook g3, indeed attacking the weak pawns on the king side. Rook a to g8, the correct rook, writes Geary. Black must keep the h7 square under control. Bishop d3, knight f8, black is ready to create some play on the king side with g5 or g6. Carlsen finds a precise way to keep black tied up, explains Geary, which is bishop e3, g6 as planned. Carlsen took, knight takes, and rook h5. A very important move, writes Geary, protecting the e5 pawn and not allowing any complications. He also could have taken on h6, as the bishop is also covering that square. Then Geary gives this complicated variation: knight takes e5, bishop f4, rook takes g3, bishop takes e5 with check, king d7, then white takes on h8, and black takes on d3, and this is okay for black. And that's why taking on h6 here is not something that Carlsen wanted to do. He played rook h5, not allowing any complications. Bishop c6 and bishop c2 out of the range of the knight with any tactical tricks, when the knight can take on e5 and then hit that bishop on d3. Moving the bishop away takes those tactics out of the position. Very instructive. King b7 and king d2 is the move that Geary prefers here, getting the king across to protect the f2 and g2 pawns. But Carlsen plays rook g4 instead. a5, bishop d1, and rook to d8. Now the king cannot go to the king side. Bishop e2 is the logical continuation after bishop d1 on the previous move, but Carlsen now saw that this bishop has nothing to do on e2, and he mustered the strength to take his last move back. After rook d8 he went back to c2 with the bishop, and Geary calls this a well-known and excellent skill of Carlsen. He is not afraid to take a bad move back. He does not try to justify a bad move by continuing on the wrong path. Again, something very instructive, something we should try as well. It's not easy to take a move back. Anand returned to g8, and now one of the most dramatic moments in World Chess Championship history. Here Carlsen played king d2. Carlsen said in a press conference after the game that he can play king d1 and white is better. But king d2 is a big blunder. Carlsen said that he immediately after making the move king d2 he saw what he had done, and then there were moments of total panic, as he described it. Because black can now win 2 pawns with the tactic knight takes e5. It's attacking the rook with a forced variation. White has to take on g8, and then black has an in-between move, knight takes c4 check. King d3, attacking the knight, but then another check to save the knight. King d2, and then black takes back on g8 and has won 2 pawns in the process for nothing. Carlsen didn't think this was necessarily lost, but black is playing for a win, that is very clear. Geary thinks the position might already be beyond the point that anyone can save it. We'll never know if Anand would have won this position, because after king d2 Anand did not see that Carlsen had blundered. He was focusing on getting counterplay on the queen side, and very quickly he played a4, and he also immediately saw that he had missed a chance after making his move. Anand was focused on getting counterplay against the a2 pawn, as he said in the press conference, and he also said you don't expect a gift, and then sometimes you don't notice it when it comes along. This mutual chess blindness must have affected both players in the remainder of the game. The game goes on. King e2. The king goes to the king side. a3 as planned. Counterplay against that pawn, and then his own pawn is very close to promotion. f3 and rook d8. Sacrificing the kingside pawns and going for counterplay, as Geary writes. A critical variation here is for Carlsen now to take on g6, f takes, rook takes, and then bishop a4 to start a counterplay, giving up that pawn, and bishop c2 with threats of bishop b1 and take on a2, and also a threat of bishop d3 check and take the pawn on c4, and then maybe later a2. This may have scared off Carlsen to go for this line. So after rook d8, he did not take on g6, he played king e1. Geary does not comment on this move. I had looked at some other grandmaster sources, and one grandmaster said Carlsen is not sure what to do, he's hesitating. Rook d7 from Anand, and bishop c1, attacking the a3 pawn. Rook hd8 here is recommended by Geary, who shows a lot of very complicated lines and believes black's best chance is to sacrifice an exchange later with rook to d3. I will not show you those variations. But rook hd8 was the best move here according to Geary. Anand played rook a8, and Geary says this is logical to get counterplay, but Anand's idea just does not work. He is one tempo short with his counterplay. Carlsen plays king e2, bishop a4 from Anand, and if white now takes on g6, then black has the counterplay he's looking for. F takes, rook takes, and then either bishop c2 or rook d1, with a lot of counterplay against this pawn, and then this pawn will become very strong. After bishop a4, Carlsen played a beautiful move. He gave a check, and after Anand interposed, he played this instantly, but it doesn't work, says Geary. Then he took on g6. F takes, rook takes, bishop back to a4, but it's too slow now. Rook takes e6, and rook d1. This counterplay comes just one move too late, explains Geary. Another option is to play bishop b3 here. And if white takes that bishop, there is a2, one step away from promotion, but after bishop b2, white is in control. a1 queen, bishop takes, rook h takes h6, and white is a whole box of pawns up. That doesn't work. Anand played rook d1 as mentioned. There goes his prize pawn on a3, rook a1, king e3, and bishop c2. After rook takes a2 instead, the bishop goes to c1 and is safe there. Bishop c2 was played in the game, but black's counterplay has not come off the ground. Carlsen played rook e7 check, and Geary writes, seeing that his counterplay attempts had failed completely, Anand resigned. What a game this was. Let's see why Anand resigned concretely. If he goes to b8, then there is rook takes h6 with checkmate threats. Black will not survive this. And if he goes to a6 with the king, then rook takes h6, rook takes a2, and bishop takes c5. This pawn is pinned. And again, black is too many pawns down. After rook e7 check on the 38th move, Anand resigned, and Carlsen took a 1-point lead in this match, but he could as easily have been 1 point down. Here we see the final table after that dramatic game 6. 4 draws followed in games 7, 8, 9 and 10. Anand fought for his last chance in game 11, sacrificed an exchange, but lost the game, and that gave Carlsen the 6.5 points that he needed to successfully defend his world title. The World Championship used to be a 3-year cycle from 1948 till 1993. Then things got messy with Kasparov and Short stepping away from FIDE, and it took many years to get it back on track. Everything goes faster in life, so we no longer have a 3-year cycle, but we now have a 2-year cycle. So in 2016, we saw Carlsen defend his title again, this time against Sergei Karyakin. I will tell you about that match in the next video. And that will be the last video in this series. Of course, I will also do videos on every game of the Carlsen-Caruana match. I'm planning to post a video a few hours after the games have been concluded. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you liked the video and this series, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. The link to the series is here. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.